Hello all. So welcome back to Learning Partner. So in this video, we are going to see how we can do form validation with template form. So when we talk about Angular, we have two types of form, template and the reactive. So in this video specific to template form, we are going to see how we validate the form. In coming videos, again, I will be taking the same thing with reactive form also. The project I have created is with Angular 17. So the new things, whatever there are in the Angular 17, that also we will discuss. Now, so if you see the form, this form I have just used it from the Bootstrap site only. So this was the form I'm using. Now, this form we need to validate. So what I have did now, let me just close everything. So if you can see, I have just created an empty project. So this is with Angular 17 with standalone components. So here we don't get the app module. So we get the app config, app route. I have created just two components. So I have created the routes for the same in app route.ts. In app.config, in app.component.html, I have added my navbar, and beside the after the navbar, I have the router outlet, so that whatever the activated component is there, that is getting loaded over here. Now, so in template form validation, so this is the HTML code what I have just copy pasted from the Bootstrap site. Now here, what we need to do first, like what are the fields we have, that object we need to create. Obviously, when we have a form in Angular, so we bind that form with a specific object. So let's create that object first. So let's go to .ts. In this variable, you can see we will create, let's say, user obj colon any, or instead of any, let's create the interface also. So export, or let's keep that because that is not focused. So I'm going with any only. Now, here we need to create the properties, whatever we have. So first name, last name, username. So let's create these properties. First name, colon, I will initialize with empty. Last name, colon empty. Username, colon empty. Then what else we have? So city, state, and the zip code. So after that, city, colon empty. Then we have state, colon empty, and zip code, colon empty. And one more thing for the agree terms. So one Boolean variable I have to create. So that will be is agree colon with false value. So whatever the fields I have in my form, like that I have created the object. So after creating this object, we need to bind this object with specific properties to all the input element. Right. So using ng model. So we are talking about template form validation. So obviously in template form validation, we go with ng model. So this object will go over here. So this is my first text box. So here I have to add square bracket, round bracket, ng model is equal to object dot my property name. So property name will be first name. So if you see here, we are getting the error. So error will be cannot bind ng model since it is known property of input. So if you remember in previous version, if you have to use the ng model, we used to import forms module in our app module. But now we don't have app module over here. So now this is the new thing like standalone component. So whatever you need to use in the standalone component, that you need to import in the component itself. So we can go to .ts, and here you can see you get the import statement. So here you just need to add forms module. Now if I save, now you can see error is gone because I have used forms module in my component. So now I can use the ng module. So whatever you want to use, you need to import that. That is the first rule. Now, just like this, I need to bind all the fields. So let me just copy paste for now. City, state, zip code, and the checkbox. So let's just bind the properties also. Agree. Zip code will go over here. State over here. City. Always try to copy paste the field name, because if you make the spelling mistake, then you won't be able to resolve the issues. It won't throw any error, but you won't also be getting the right output. So always try to copy paste the field name. So we have created the object, that object we have bind to the form properly. Now let's see if we get any error. We should get one error. Let me just explain you that. So if we go to console, here you will get error something like this. If ng model is used within a form tag, either a name attribute or name attribute must be set or the form control must be defined as a standalone in ng model option. So this error you will get if your form is inside the form tag, and inside the form tag if you are using ng model. So now right now you can see we have used ng model directive inside the form tag. So whenever you are using ng model directive inside the form tag, the name attribute becomes mandatory, this name attribute. So here you just have to add the same property. So now I'm just copy pasting. Let me just copy paste. Wherever you are using the ng model, now their name property you need to add. Now what you need to pass? The same property which you have binded to the ng model. That's it. Let me just do this. Then we will see the error will be gone. Username, last name. Let's save. Now if you see, let me just continue. So in the console, you don't get to see that error because we have added name property, all the input elements. So let's try to remove one. Let's try to remove the state one. Let's save it again. Again, you will get to see that error. So as I said, wherever you are using ng model, so that is very self-explanatory. You can see either you can do this or you can use this. But normally we don't use this. We just add the name property. So wherever you are using ng model, name property becomes mandatory. But if you are not using the elements inside the form tag, then name attribute is not mandatory. So we have seen two errors: how to use forms model over here and why to use the name property. Now validation. When it comes to template form validation, all the validation rule we set in the HTML only. So like this required, then let's say min length I need to set. So min length, let's say I need at least 3 characters. Then here min length at least 5 characters. Then we can set the pattern also for in case of email. So let's just search the email pattern. Email pattern regex. Let's specific to Angular. Let's just go to Stack Overflow. We just need the pattern to validate the email. This is very long one. We need the easy one. Let's try this if it works. So this pattern we will add it on the email text box. So we have, okay, username is nothing but that. So let's add it over here. So just like this, min length, max length, required, pattern, all validation, first you need to add it over here like this. After that, you need to show the validation messages also. So currently if we save, let me just show you. So these validation messages are coming by default. But if we are entering, it is not going away because this is just a static only. You can say this is just a static. Now, when it comes to template form validation, what you need to do? First thing, you need to create a hash property. So over here, hash, and then you need to create any variable name. So let's say first name, same property I'm using is equal to, and inside this property, you need to store ng model. So what is the meaning of this? We are creating a variable on the front end. This is nothing, sorry, on the HTML side in the template. So this is like creating a variable. And in this variable, what we are storing? We are using equal to sign, means that we are assigning. So whatever the data we have in this ng model directive, that we are storing over here. Now, this you can use over here. So this div should be visible. If first I will tell you like the validation message should be like whatever the validation message we have added, right? Validation rule. So min length and the required. So only two validations are there. That is, this text box is mandatory and it should have at least 3 characters. So now inside this, I will create a span. First message like this is required. Let me just copy paste. Second message will be minimum length 3 character, minimum 3 characters needed. So I have two messages. First is like for the mandatory and second is for the minimum character. So let's just save. Currently we haven't done anything. So you can see both messages are visible. But these messages should be, and even if I type, these messages should be hidden. So, and at a time, only one validation message should be visible, either required. If I have not provided any input inside this text box, so only this is required validation message should be visible. But if I type something, this should be hidden and only this should be visible up till whatever the required character I'm not entering. So now we have created a hash property over here. Now this hash property we can use on this span using with ngIf. So ngIf is equal to. Now here we need to add this dot errors. First, we will get an error like ngIf directly was used in the template. So with the previous version, if we have to use the ngIf or ngIf, we didn't need to import anything, but it is Angular 17. So whatever you use, that you need to import. So ngIf comes from the common module. So in imports, you need to add common module like this. Now that error will gone away. Now, let me just first print what do we get in this first name with JSON pipe. Let's just save. Let me just remove this. First, I need to showcase like what do we get in this first name. Okay, so for pipe, let's see what do we need to use for pipe. How do we use JSON pipe? Let's save. So if you have to use the pipe also, there also you need to add, but it will show. Yeah, I thought it. So if you try to print the object of this now, you will get circular error. So here instead of this first name dot errors is what I want to show you. So errors. So currently you can see over here, we are getting something like required true. But if I pass a value, then it got changed to min length. Let me just comment this and let's see it properly. So what I have done, the hash variable, what I have created that I have used over here, and out of that errors I'm trying to access. Let's save. So here you can see by default, we are getting something object we are getting, and inside that object required property is there with the value true. But if I enter, that is going away and another object is coming that is with min length, and message also like required length is character and actual length is 1. So these are nothing but the errors we have in this particular ng model. So now same we can use. So first name dot error. Let's uncomment this now. Let's remove this. So now on this ng if first name dot errors dot required, but it will throw the error because it says like we have to access this property in this signature with square bracket. So let's copy. We can access object either using dot property or using the square bracket also. So instead of dot, we have to use like this. Now it will say like it can be null or unexpected. Let's see. For that also we need to add. So it is saying like the object is possibly null. So that's because it is saying like you are reading a data from a null object. Means first name dot error can be null, na? So that's why we need to add question mark and then dot. So this becomes like if it is not null, then only we will try to read the required property. So this is for required. Let's copy paste this. Another will be min length. Let's save and check now. So currently you can see on the page load, we are just getting this is required. So we have two span. This is required and the min length 3 characters. But on the page load, we are just getting the this is required. If I type, so now error message got changed. Minimum 3 characters needed. If I provide 3 character, then that message is also going away. Means we are validating our particular element properly. Let's remove everything. So on the page, if we don't have anything, you are getting this is required. If you type anything, second message will be there. And if you provide the valid input, that is also going away. So this is how we validate the input. But if you see over here, if I refresh, by default also this message is coming. By default, this message should not be visible. Either if I touch this, then only it should come. Na? By default, this message should not be visible. First, let's remove the remaining one. It is getting confusing. Let me just comment. Let's just remove. So now if you see on the page load, we are getting this is required. Normally, if you have seen any form, if you are filling any form, we don't get validation once the page load. Either if we click on submit or if we clicked and go away, then only validation message should be triggered. So now to handle this scenario, what we have to do in the this first name property, you get a in this first name hash property, you will get a property that we will add it over here on the parent div. So ng if equal to this dot invalid. Okay, so invalid is a property you get, and two more properties you need to add. First name dot touched or dirty. These two things you can add. Either it is invalid, either it is touch or it is dirty. So these things you can add. Now if I save, so on the page load, we won't be able to see that. But now if I clicked and go away, now the message is coming. Means user has touched that text box but didn't enter the value, didn't enter any value. So now validation message will get triggered. So this is how your validation message text box should look. What you need to do, you need to create a hash property. The name can be anything. Either you can use this only or anything. This is like creating a variable, so you can create anything. But in this way, hash property, what you need to store is ng model. And after that text box, you will be creating a parent div there. You will add a text danger just to add a red color or something. On that div, you need to add a this ng condition with invalid first name dot touch, first name dot dirty with or. Then respective validation. This span was required. This span is required to show just the validation message for the mandatory. Then this is for required because on this text box we have just added two validation, mean length and the required. Now let's just try for this email. So now same thing. Again, you need to create a hash property over here. Let's say email is equal to what you need to store? ng model. Now over here, let's uncomment this. Now first for the over here, so star ng if what we need to do. So email dot invalid we need to use, and then in the or bracket you need to use email dot touch property or it is dirty. Then here we can create a message that is span star ng if. Now in this text box we have added a pattern. So for pattern you have to add email dot errors question mark dot square bracket. Then inside that you need to pass pattern. Then here we will say email ID is not proper. Let's just save and check this now. We are talking about this. So if I touch, wait, something is wrong. Email is invalid. Email or touch. Why it is not displaying? Let's save. Let me just inspect why that div is not visible. It is visible. Okay, so that div is visible. So here you can see, let me just reload again. So if I, let's reload again. I just need to show you that div is visible or not. Just a second. So this is our username text box. So here, this div is there. After that, one more div will be visible, this div. So if I touch, so this div is visible, but outside of that, we are not entering the wrong password. So here you can see email ID. So validation message is coming. Okay, now we need to check like if we provide the correct email address, that validation message should not be visible. So let's add chetan@dummy.com. So you can see once we enter the proper email address, then it is going away. gmail.com. So see, if I provide the correct email address, that message is going away. Because on this field, we have not entered the required validation message. So let's just copy paste. Instead of required, it will be, instead of pattern, it will be required. This is, or let's just add a required. So now if I touch and go away, now required validation message is coming. But if I enter some data, another message is coming like email ID not proper. If I enter proper email address, that is also going away. So this is how we do the validation in template form. You need to create a hash property, and using that hash property, you can just use the ng for the different element. Now, one more thing, if I refresh and if I submit the form, once I click on submit, then if I'm not touching anything, let's say click on, let's reload. If I didn't touch any element, that validation message won't be visible. But if I click, then my validation should trigger, right? If user doesn't touch any element, how he will know like we need to show the validation message, right? So once I click on submit, my validation message should trigger. So how do we handle that? So to do that, on this button click element, just a simple trick, I have to create one more variable, is form submitted. I'm just creating a variable with data type boolean. I'm initializing with false value. Now on this button click, what I need to do, I just need to call that function. I just need to call a function. So click on submit, just a function I'm creating. Now let's create this function. Now, once I click on the submit button, this function will get called, and in this function, I'm just making this variable true. Now user will get to know, we get to know like once user submit, this variable is getting true. Now this variable I have to use over here on the parent if condition. If this is true and this, and with this or, so now or we need to pass this variable. So let's just copy this over here and over here also. So only two fields we have validating. So let's save. Now, if I click on submit, you can see validation message is getting triggered. Obviously required will come, other message won't be visible because once we type, then another message. So again, let's go. So currently we are in the landing stage. Let's say I haven't touched anything, but I have directly click on submit. So now validation message is visible. Like this we do. Again, one more thing we can do, just like we have created element hash property on the element, just like that we can create a hash property on the form also. Because even if we have shown the validation message over here, but in the function also means in the .ts also we need the form state, like form is valid or not. So that also we can use. So here form is equal to, here just like I'm creating a hash property. In case of input element, we have stored ng model. Here you need to store ng form. Now this form variable, this hash property, let's make it user form. Now I have created hash property username, user form, and in that hash property I have stored ng form. Now this I will send as a parameter over here. Now we need to create parameter over here also. So form. And for this form, we have to add a data type. So ng form. So it is added over here. Now let's add a debugger. I need to showcase you like do you all the form value you will get it over here also. Let's save. Let's enable the debugger. Now if I click on submit, so here you can see whole form value you get. So now you can check form dot is valid, invalid. So currently you can see in the form the invalid property will be there. Currently it is saying true because it is invalid because we haven't provided the value. Now let's continue. And if I provide the value, now if I click on submit, now again let's check form dot invalid. Why it is getting true? Pattern attribute invalid character or form dot valid. Okay, so valid property. So in valid property you can get false. Let's try with removing this. And if I submit, let's try form valid again. In both case it is getting false only. Why so? Let's try to print the same thing over here. Form dot invalid. I'm just trying to print the same value over here. Let's see what do we get. Currently we are getting true over here. Let's enter the proper value. Still same. Is property change in Angular 17? Let's try with JSON. Is it a circular or not? Not sure. Okay. So here, what else we got? Status is valid. Is stop has error false. Valid. Status valid. Nothing is getting changed in the object. Let's try to search Angular dev doc. Might be possible like in Angular 17 some properties might get changed. So let's see that if they were provided it or not. Template driven form. Duplicate. Let me just check. So as per Angular, they have said like this. So form dot valid you need to use. So previously we used to access directly the form value, but now it is inside the form. So whatever the property you create, dot form dot valid. So let's try that now. So here you can see I have added user form dot valid. So let's try that. So on the page load, you can see it is true. But if I provide the value, proper value, so now it has become false. Even if we remove, now you get the true. So now this thing you need to validate. So let's try to print constant is form valid. So form dot valid. So now you are getting it over the same thing over here. Let's check. So currently if we click on submit, validation, let's enable it. Currently if we submit, in is form valid, you are getting false because the form is not validated because we have not provided the required validation. But if I provide, let's enter. Now if I click on submit, so now here you can see we have got true means form is valid. So this variable you can use in your function also before making the API call. So you can just add a if statement like if this is true, then only you can make the API call. Now this same thing you can use to disable the button also. So now using property binding, you can do the same thing. So disabled, and you can pass this value over here. But now that validation message won't trigger because we have just disabled the button. Unless form is not valued, button won't be enabled. So now you can see button is disabled. If we provide the form value properly, then only button is getting enabled. Let's remove. So now you can see button is disabled. So these are the all various possible ways what we can do in template form. So the basic validation with hash property, with form also we can do. Email validation is also there. Like just like email validation, you can validate PAN card, Aadhaar card, whatever the pattern you need to create. Let's say in case of password also like minimum 3 character, one alphabet, two capital, lowercase, number should be required. You can create your pattern and then you can add it on the password text box. So this is everything what we need to see when we decide to go with the form validation in case of template form. So I hope you find this video helpful. Please do like and subscribe my channel. That's it with this current video.